In 1993, Jurassic Park hit theaters to massive critical and commercial acclaim. It was loosely based on the 1990 novel by Michael Crichton about an amusement park full of dinosaurs and the mayhem you'd expect from that. It used computer-generated special effects that revolutionized the industry and opened the doors to a flood of copycats. Of course, like most big-budget projects at the time, the license moved into the world of video games for pretty much everything. It didn't matter what hardware you had, there was a Jurassic Park title available to you. NES, Game Boy, Game Gear, Master System, Super Nintendo, Sega CD, PC, Amiga, and yes, even the mighty Sega Genesis got a version to call its own. It was handled by Blue Sky Software at the request of Sega of America. It was released in August of 1993 while the film was still red hot. In an effort to set the game apart from what we had already seen on the platform, Blue Sky took the approach of making the animation as realistic as possible. It shipped on a 16 megabit cartridge that sold extremely well right from the get-go, moving over 2 million units in the first few weeks. The magazines I followed the most also made it clear it was a stellar effort well worth your $50. Electronic Gaming Monthly raved about it, dropped an Editor's Choice Gold on it, and praised pretty much everything from the graphics to the gameplay. GamePro likewise praised it heavily, calling it one of the best movie games ever made. I just couldn't wait to get my hands on it. I mean, the movie was great, the reviews were great, what could possibly go wrong? Our story begins with Dr. Alan Grant taking a tour of Jurassic Park when a massive storm hits and frees the mighty T-Rex, who assaults his vehicle and leaves him wrecked and alone. Dr. Grant must survive his way across 7 stages as he makes his way back to the visitor center and a chance to escape this nightmare. Funnily enough, the story here doesn't really follow the film and its locations. There's no other characters from the movie, and there are some areas that are entirely new. In fact, it seems to use many of the places from the novel the film entirely skipped out on. When Dr. Grant awakens to find his Jeep destroyed, the platforming adventure begins. The objective is basically to make your way through the stages and get to the end. These stages are not just horizontal left-to-right affairs, but also feature quite a bit of vertical play as well. With that verticality comes fall damage, so be aware of how far down you drop. You can see a bit further below you by crouching and taking a peek. Along with your standard jump, Dr. Grant can pull himself up ledges, climb ropes, vines, rocks, and other terrain to get around. Not everything you can climb is immediately obvious, so be sure to check everything around you. While the movie never really saw Dr. Grant use any weapons, here you have access to a number of things that can really help you out. There are 2 tranquilizer darts, one weak and one strong, to knock out the dinosaurs. There's also a shock stick that can be charged at different power levels to accomplish the same end. Grenades come in 3 different forms: the gas grenade, the flash grenade, and the concussion grenade, which, you guessed it, all knock out the dinosaurs that you hit. Finally, the rocket is the ultimate weapon, incapacitating your foes instantly. It may seem like these items would make your journey super easy, but you have to find ammo as you make your way through the areas, and it's really easy to use up quickly as you panic fire during a surprise enemy encounter. Health is also spread around the level to help you out, so be sure to collect it even if it takes you off the beaten path. There is a vehicle-based stage where you must navigate a massive descending waterfall, but outside of that, you are on foot the entire way. In a surprise move, you also get a secondary adventure featuring a velociraptor. The stage design changes a bit, but you are basically doing the same things, just this time against human enemies. In the raptor's favor, there is food everywhere, and you're gonna need it. Whether it's the oddly placed turkey leg or snacking on compies, damage comes fast and easy against weapon-toting bad guys. This does change up the gameplay quite a bit in terms of how you approach things, so that extra mode is definitely appreciated. Jurassic Park is a very decent looking title. The animation is the star of the show, of course, but I also appreciated the environments. From the dark jungle to a flowing river to the familiar visitor center, it has a feel that does the source material proud. Dr. Grant's sprite is a simple but great representation of his film counterpart, and most of the dinosaurs move realistically. Unfortunately, the performance sees a ton of slowdown. Sometimes it doesn't matter if there's just a few things on the screen, it still slows down, almost as if the game is in constant struggle not to do so. It's the oddest thing because sometimes there's lots of enemies on the screen and it never shows up. It doesn't ruin the gameplay, but it's there and rears up enough to make you wonder if the game was fully optimized before release. I mean, there isn't really anything here that should be taxing the Genesis in the slightest. And that really is the feeling that Jurassic Park leaves you with graphically. It's a decent looking game with nice animation, and that's about it. Not spectacular, but not particularly impressive either. I would have liked to have seen some more enemy variety for one. You basically face the same 3 or 4 dinosaurs the entire way. The tiny Compy, the spitting Dilophosaur, and the menacing Raptor, which is about all you see for the entire game. This isn't a short adventure, so a bit more visual variety would have gone a long way, particularly in the later stages when falling robs you of more lives than the sparse enemy placement. That animation does go a long way to be sure, but I wanted a little more from the rest of the presentation. The music in Jurassic Park was created using gems, and it's one of the most heinous examples of that toolset you'll find on the platform. This music is just awful. It's loaded with screeching digitized animal sounds, and the rest is minimalistic rhythms that'll make you wonder if this is actually coming from your Genesis, or is your kid wailing away on his Fisher-Price keyboard nearby. There is only one single track in this entire game that is even remotely worth noting, with most of the rest stinking up the audio portion of this adventure and doing a real disservice to the source material. I give you fair warning, what you are about to hear should be done so at reduced volume. So, now that we know we have okay graphics and a garbage soundtrack, where does that leave us on the gameplay exactly? To put it bluntly, Jurassic Park can be a very fun title, but there are a number of poorly designed elements that will likely split its audience right down the middle. There's lots here to see. The stages are large and there are typically multiple sections to each one. Most of the stages have a puzzle-like element to them where you must find the proper route through subtle maze-like design. It's not always clear where you need to go or what you need to climb. Sometimes it takes a few tries to understand how to get from point A to point B. That discovery works in the game's favor and adds quite a bit to its appeal. It's also fun to face the dinosaurs. While I do wish you got more of them, what is there is familiar and menacing, a delightful combination that really appeals to the kid in me. The fact that you have 2 entirely different species to play as is also really cool. While Dr. Grant faces down the dinos in his adventure, the Raptor faces dinos and humans, pulling double duty on the challenge. But those aforementioned design flaws are a massive part of what you need to contend with here. Right from jump, the stage design is incredibly cheap in spots. There are insta-death drops everywhere. Sometimes out of the blue a rock will fall on top of you. Sometimes you have no clue what the hell just happened. For instance, the speed of your boat determines whether you fall through the damn floor on the river stage. Sometimes the stage design is so mystifying, it leaves you wondering if you have completely missed the obvious route and are doing something very wrong. And my god, don't get me started on that final scene with the Raptors. I spent days trying to figure that out back then, only to give up in absolute disgust. When someone showed me how to do it years later, I sat in stunned disbelief at how completely asinine it was. Who the hell figured that out without being told? If you would like to avoid a spoiler, you should go ahead and skip ahead about a minute or so. When you face the final set of Raptors to end the game, there is only one way to do it. No matter how much weapon ammo you expend, you cannot stun these two. Then I got the bright idea of dropping the bones on top of them, but I just couldn't figure out how. I had no clue how to beat them until I was shown. All you do is fall in between them with their backs turned and throw grenades. This causes the bones to fall on top and kill them. And that's it. I'm all for puzzle-like boss fights, but this is just so incredibly specific, I just don't see how anyone accomplished this without sheer blind luck. I mean, willingly falling in between two Raptors that insta-kill you any other time you engage them isn't exactly clear-cut. To make matters worse, there are no continues, forcing you to use the password system to completely restart a stage from the very beginning. This leads to lots of frustration, and only the most dedicated will see things through and defeat it. Sega was quite keen to exploit the Jurassic Park license as much as possible. Of that original license, they produced 4 games. There was the Genesis version I reviewed here, a 1993 Game Gear and Master System edition that was entirely different, a 1993 Sega CD release that was a point-and-click adventure, and again, completely different, and finally a 1994 System 32 Superscaler that was released only in the arcade. Jurassic Park for the Genesis also gave way to multiple sequels. 1994's Rampage Edition was a direct continuation that improved upon just about everything. It plays smoother, looks better, and the stage design is a lot more palatable to the average gamer. A third Genesis release called The Lost World showed up in late 1997 when the Saturn was damn near dead in North America, showcasing some of the most incredible special effects you have ever seen in a 16-bit game. I mean, some of this stuff would have been expected on the 32-bit machines at the time. The Game Gear saw its own version of The Lost World, an action platformer that was released super late in its life. Sega released a Model 3 arcade game called The Lost World as well, an on-rail shooter similar to the first. Even the Saturn got a 2.5D action game based on the Lost World license, but Sega didn't handle that turd. But for all its success and media attention, Jurassic Park's legacy on the Genesis is somewhat cloudy. The animation is strong and some of the exploration elements make this one quite a joy to discover. But make no mistake, the janky performance, cheap deaths, and oddball scripted sections weigh heavy on this one's long-term appeal. I've seen it turn off folks on the first stage and have them not wanting to invest any more time in it. It lacks the pick-up and play quality that defined other big-name movie titles like Aladdin or similar action releases like Sega's own Shinobi series. The appeal here is pretty specific. If you don't appreciate what it does with its stage layouts, chances are you are gonna come away from this severely unimpressed. I can't say you owe any game some extra time if you don't like it, but this does have some real appeal if you explore a bit and find some appreciation in traversing its dark and foreboding environments. Which side of that fence will you fall on? I can't answer that one for you, but I can recommend you at least give this one a try. It was a true exclusive and has never been released on any other platform. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.